Hey everybody, I wanted to come on to talk about something I've been researching. So I have been looking into the impact of somebody who books a party but doesn't actually make a purchase on the party they booked off of. What this means is that when it comes time to their party, they don't actually have any product in hand except for the gift that they were given, which in reality was likely a discontinued product because most of our gifts that we give are discontinued products. So I wanted to see what that looked like, and we knew that it really wasn't great, but the numbers are way worse than I thought as far as the negative impact it has on a business when this happens. So we've tracked about 250 total parties in our year. So this does not include if somebody reschedules, because it doesn't matter, or cancels prior to when I start tracking. I don't really collect that data. And then I also, and then it's a relative number because some people have rescheduled and I missed that tracking or something like that. So it's roughly 250. That's a low estimate. It's likely closer to 275 total parties, which really only make these numbers significantly worse because that extra 25 parties are parties that just nothing happened with. That's just the reality of it. I just can't collect everything, so this is what we're working with. So of those 250 parties, 60 of those parties had hosts that booked a party but did not purchase product, so they went into their party with no product on hand, and this, as we'll see, is a huge negative impact on their parties. So from a sales standpoint, of those 60 parties, one party had $1,000, but that single party had one person place a $724 order. So the reality is that party barely qualified if not for that one person who chose to spend a wild amount of money. I had no parties at the $750 level, 4 parties at the $500 level, and one of which was a booking off of an in-home party. So she at least got the chance to see and touch and feel product. We had 9 parties qualified, and then another 16 parties that had some form of sales but didn't qualify, and 30 parties, or 50% of these hosts, had nothing happen. They either canceled or their party just went kaput. Many of those were reschedules that then turned into nothing, because that's very common for a rescheduled party. So crazy. 50% of parties from a sales standpoint, 50% produces nothing, and by my count, 55. Sorry. Oh, I didn't direct that one, but. And then we'll get into the impact that has on the larger scale of the business here in a minute. But from a booking standpoint, of those 60 parties, I had 8 parties that actually had at least one booking. Those 8 parties produced 15 bookings. But really what we're looking at is we had 60 hosts who didn't make a purchase prior to booking a party, and they only produced 15 bookings. And if you take out the 2 outliers of 2 parties that had 4 bookings on them, that means that it only produced 7 bookings over 58 hosts. Just the point here is that it's very, very little impact happening and very, very little value going on. But let's kind of talk about what does this mean for our business? What does this mean? These 60 parties, these hosts who booked a party and chose not to make a purchase. What does this mean for our business? Well, what it means is this. One, this accounts for 24% of our total parties we've done this year, which means a quarter of our parties have come from hosts who did not make a purchase prior to their party. And again, that means that 12, 13% of all the parties we've done this year have gone nowhere simply because they didn't make a purchase prior to booking a party. They didn't have product in their hands. Wild. But this isn't even it. So rescheduled parties are a crazy thing. You don't want to reschedule because the reality is roughly 15 to 20% is your success rate for rescheduled party. As soon as somebody reschedules or you reschedule, no matter who reschedules, as soon as a party is rescheduled, it goes down to a success rate of 15 to 20%. Like that, so most of the time, those parties aren't going anywhere. And it used to be 10%, it's gotten a little bit better, but the reality is you're looking like 15%. You still got to do them because we have a freedom fighter on our team that rescheduled her party, and now she's a fantastic freedom fighter. So good can still come from it, but we're seeing here that 61% of all the rescheduled parties we had this year came from hosts who chose not to make an order before their party. hosts that didn't have product in their hands are more likely to be reschedules and then more likely to be less effective. And you want to kind of limit your rescheduling as much as possible. And we're seeing here that 61% of them are because they just didn't have product in their hand. So another one from a sales standpoint is these hosts that did not make a purchase prior to booking a party account for 55% of parties that don't have any sales and 49% of non-qualified parties. That means half of all of our parties that didn't qualify this year came from hosts who didn't purchase product prior to booking a party. Half of all the parties that didn't qualify came from these types of hosts. And that's the number that's wild to me. That if I want to try to get hosts qualified and I want to try to make sure that they're making the biggest impact that they can, then getting product in their hands is a must. Now, I just did this research. I've just been talking to Jess about it. We haven't figured out, how do we overcome this? We haven't looked at that. And really, I'd love to hear from you. What would you do? How would you try to overcome this to get product in people's hands who book parties? How do you get them to make a purchase? How do you get them to kind of step forward and spend a bit of their money, get some skin in the game so that they can get product in their hands? Because we have high quality, really, really good product, but it doesn't mean anything if having a good quality product is irrelevant if they don't own it. So let me know in the comments, but I hope this is helpful for you. Just recognize one thing that I would recommend if someone reschedules a party or someone books a party and for online, but doesn't make a purchase, I would make sure that you're finding another host somewhere to put in that multi-host party, because there's a very, very high likelihood that those types of parties are going to go nowhere, just from the numbers and what the statistics tell us. So if you're not a numbers person, sorry if this is confusing, but the reality is when somebody doesn't make an order prior to booking a party, the likelihood of that party actually going anywhere is very little. And it's going to account for a major waste of time for you. That's just the reality of it. And then we'll kind of brainstorm and work through some ways to overcome these issues. As Jess and I get a chance to talk down and I hear your responses, just let me know. But I hope this was helpful, and you guys have a great weekend.